to GFC, I'm a G4 star.
Let's get ready then to kick off the official program tonight. Many of us came here because this is the supposed land of gold. Unfortunately, we meet tonight under circumstances that have not been the best. It is the first time that many of us would have been gathered in a room such as this with people, and I see around people are not wearing masks as well, so I don't know, don't worry, I'm not the mask police. You don't have to put them on if you don't want to. But certainly it's great to see the level of comfort that there is after what has been such a difficult time. So tonight's conversation is really about taking stock of what the impact of the last 2 years has been on the film industry in particular. You'll see that later on in our program, after we've heard from our panelists, there'll be an opportunity for all of you to weigh in on the day's conversation and talk about what you believe some of the challenges that face the industry are, and most importantly, what the solutions to take it forward can be. I think many of us are not in doubt about what some of the difficulties the industry has faced over the last 2 years have been. I was having a conversation just towards the end of last year, and it was with a sound engineer. And this is somebody that at the time I had not seen for about 2 years. And we're talking about what life has been like and just, how he's been surviving. And he says, Cathy, one of the most difficult things is that over the last year and a half, I have lost so many colleagues, some of them not just to COVID-19, but others who have taken their own lives because the pressure just got too much and it just got unbearable. And I think those are the realities that the industry is confronted with. It's not easy to have a country under lockdown and have very little movement and not be able to earn an income. And we know that the film industry, alongside the tourism industry, have really taken the hardest knock. And tonight perhaps presents an opportunity to say, how do we reset where we are? Yes, there's been problems that may have been backlogs from the past, but how do we take the most recent past, along with the things that have not been done before, to pave a way into the future, a way that can be prosperous for everybody else who's in the room, but those who are not in the room as well. On that note, let me welcome our key dignitaries for tonight. The MEC for Sports, Arts, Culture, Recreation, Ms. Mbali Hlophe, good evening. The Deputy Chairperson for the Gauteng Film Commission, Percy Manzini. The CEO for the GFC, Keitumetse, Lebaka. The CEO for MICT CETA, Maijang Mpherwane. Let me also welcome the great actors, actresses, I was speaking about you earlier, producers, scriptwriters, stylists, sound engineers, technical experts, location scouts, and location providers. And of course, members of the tourism and hospitality industry who are so central to making, to creating the success rather in the film industry. Let me also introduce our panelists for tonight. Of course, they're sitting right here in the front. The CEO of Siriti Films. Of course, they also produce Gomora, Thabang Moleya. Hello, Thabang. You can stand up, don't look shy.
It's not the CEO of Gomora.
All right, there we go.
Hello, Mommy.
I won't admit that I watch Gomora and catch up on Saturdays when I have a moment to. Let me also welcome the IDC Head Audiovisual, Maijang Mpherwane. SABC Head of Channels, David Makubyane. Sanctuary Film Director and Writer, Donavan Marsh. And of course, we also have joining us here today, GTA Head Destination Media and Communication, Barba Gaoganediwe. There we go. We'll be hearing from our panelists in a short while. Before we do that, let me invite the GFC CEO, Keitumetse, Lebaka, just to come and open for us and set the tone in terms of what we can expect out of tonight's program.
I sort of like the whistle. Let it come out. Good evening. I believe it's evening, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very, very much for joining us here this afternoon. You know, this is one of our first post-COVID celebrations and meetings. And what a wonderful way to start it with the audiovisual industry, directors, producers, scriptwriters in here today. The MEC of the Provincial Department of Sports, Arts and Culture felt it was important for us together to say, how do we recover post-COVID? How do we position the audiovisual industry for the future? And as such, we see here that you've got a diverse guests. Where else have you seen government, creative, private in one room? Without a shadow of doubt, we believe that after today, there will be solutions that will increase promote and drive the industry to the next level. We all know that the Gauteng and film and TV industry has a potential of contributing more than 2.5 billion in the GDP, both in direct and indirect spend. We also know that the industry alone produces more than 20,000 workers, most of which are freelancers. This alone is a call for a greater investment in the province. We know that the province is a home to over 3,000 production companies, which constitute of over 80% of the national figures. Knowing that, we need to make sure that we still contribute to Gauteng audiovisual industry. We understand that there are a number of challenges in the industry. Challenges such as transformation of the sector in the value chain. We know that the industry is still male-dominated, and there needs to be a change. We also know that there is limited funding opportunities and access to audiovisual projects. This alone leads to unsustainable production companies. We further know that most of the production companies and employees are freelancers. How do we create more opportunities? We are very well aware, from a 4IR point of view, that there needs to be great investment. We understand that the post-production is one of the expensive areas in the value chain. How do we, as the GFC and the department, ensure that we've got software that allows for cutting-edge effects that is able to position the audiovisual industry forward? We also know there is very limited skills for quality conversion of digital cinema packages in South Africa. I'm glad that we have the MICT seated today, because we know if you look into the economic recovery plan, it does put the skills development, among other sectors, in the forefront. We then need to engage to say, how do we upskill, reskill the industry? We know that there are scarce skills in the sector. We're looking at occupations such as the unit producers, quality production managers, continuity designers, just to name just a few. We understand that we need to develop opportunities for script writers and provide them with opportunities to avoid oversubscription of just but a few. When you study the industry, we understand that marketing and distribution is a challenge. It is one of the factors that we need to look in. We therefore need to sit and say, how do we face all these challenges and come up with a solution? How do we invest in best productions? As a GFC, we have gone and reviewed our strategy model. You will start seeing from the next financial years that we are now adopting a hybrid model that allows us to promote up-and-coming production companies. We also understand that we need to make sure that the new entrants into the industry are given a chance. So we are looking ahead. We're looking into how do we enable women producers, directors, and script writers, give them a footing. We cannot marginalize those who are living with disability, and we are focusing on that. As a film commission, we are looking into various initiatives over the next 3, possibly 5 years that we will implement. We understand that there is a need for film studios, international film studios, right here in Gauteng that will bring investors, because we understand that as we bring investors here, this allows our production company to get a headway. We're also looking into establishing what we call a film fund, which will allow production companies to tap into this fund, because we understand that there is a struggle, particularly for the independent filmmakers at this particular point. As a Gauteng Film Commission, we will be bringing you what we call the Gauteng Film Summit later in the year, which we're very excited about. The Film Summit will not only inject funding into Gauteng as a province, but it will allow skills transfer. We will have various exhibition centers. We will put development into areas like gaming, animation. But most importantly, it will be a way of opening markets to the industry. We're also going to introduce awards of a different kind, which will be supporting the Film Summit. That will be very vibrant. As we are sitting here today, we are saying, let us gather our heads and say, how do we work together as a collective in taking the industry forward? MEC, thank you very much for this great engagement session, because we believe out of this we will start working on credible plans, tangible plans that will craft a way forward. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much for that, and that of course was the GFC CEO Keitumetse Lebaka. You heard about the various initiatives that the GFC wants to undertake, but of course they've also been doing a lot of work. There are many ways in which they've been supporting upcoming talent in the industry. I want us to quickly take a look.
Gauteng Film Commission, a funding agency, focuses on empowering young and upcoming filmmakers in Gauteng. This year, 18 qualifying beneficiaries received equipment to enhance their filmmaking ability.
Congratulations, GT filmmakers. We are very, very excited to hand over this equipment to you. You are the future of film here in South Africa, and we believe that you will continue the legacy of films in South Africa.
The Gauteng MEC for Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation. I'd like to congratulate you on being a recipient of this incredible gift of equipment that you're going to get.
Let me welcome then up next David Makubyane, who is the SABC channel head. Of course, for every film you need not only content but a platform, and I hope David is going to break it down for us. What does it take to have content commissioned by the SABC, and what is it that they're really hungry for right now? David, let's give him a round of applause, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you could tell with the AV, I just wanted to make sure I don't take too much time talking to you, because most of the information is captured in the AV in terms of who we are as SABC video entertainment platforms. Now, the first thing that I want to do is just thank the MEC and the Department of Sports, Art, Culture and Recreation for inviting us, together with the Gauteng Film Commission, for also arranging this. You know, as soon as I got the invite, one of the things that I said to the office of the MEC was, it's quite fortuitous, or it's a coincidence, because we are planning to have a roadshow in March. So this is almost like kicking our roadshow and starting that off. The purpose of that roadshow is to reintroduce our brands to the industry. There are two arms. There's one that's the commercial industry, and then it's the industry that's here. And we just want to say who we are. You know, for a long time, the SABC has been dominant in terms of audiences. Yes, we still have leading brands, we still have a lot of audiences, but we all know that at the end of March, there's going to be analog switch off. What does that mean? That we might just be on the same platform in a DTT space with many other channels that you know, everyone would need to access, because most of our audiences that we had an advantage on will not be able to access our channels. We knew this 2 years ago, we knew this in 2010 that it was coming. So we've already been planning, and there are plans that are bubbling, and we're going to share those in our roadshow. Part of it is to stop sleeping. As so many people say, SABC is a sleeping giant. The reality is we've got competition that has come, and we internally say they're eating our lunch, right? And our signature and our strength for a very long time as the SABC has been local content, and it remains our signature. We spend 80% of our total budget on local productions and only 20% on international production, and that remains. Obviously, we've had a bit of a challenge. We've had a bit of a drop in certain audiences in the past 2 years, yet we are stable and we're starting to turn around. Our mission is to start turning the broadcaster, which is the public broadcaster, which is your broadcaster, around. We can't do it alone because of the challenges that we have, obviously financially, because of globalization. We all see the entrance of new and digital platforms into our space. Audiences have different content that they can watch. We've moved from most probably having about 10 channels years ago, about 15 years ago, now to sitting with 270 different channels that we are now competing with. Our model as the SABC obviously is one that relies on TV licenses, but also relies on advertising. Advertisers are looking for audiences, and audiences are looking for compelling content. And that's where our partnership comes in. Yes, we need to fund that content, but unless we've got compelling content that comes from the industry, we're not going to be able to thrive. Now, most of the content, well, in terms of video entertainment, and let me take a step back and introduce myself or the division that I'm from, because we've rebranded, and a lot of people will hear this term, video entertainment. It's basically television. So SABC Television, that I'm heading up in terms of the platforms, includes SABC 1, SABC 2, SABC 3, and we've got other 2 channels, DTT channels that you haven't, most of you haven't seen. SABC Education, we launched during COVID in response to the situation that we found our learners in, and with negotiations with telcos and partners, a lot of those students could access educational content that was zero rated. And there's also SABC Sport. We also have plans to launch, and maybe this is a sneak preview. We've got plans to also play in the OTT space. Watch the space, right? we won't be able to get into that space alone, because most of the content that sits on the channels that I spoke about, notice I didn't mention SABC News. That is an internal production, mostly because obviously we want to retain the editorial. So most of the content comes from the industry. Yes, we've got a mandate from ICASA, we've got quotas. We are expected to deliver on that mandate. Unlike a lot of independent broadcasters, we need to deliver on language. That's why you will see a lot of the content on SABC 1 is in Nguni. We have to, on SABC 2 is Sotho. We have to look at regional content. We have to look at representation. How many female producers do we have? How many black female producers do we have? So all those we consider as we acquire content, right? But that content comes from the industry. And there are partners that we would like to partner with to assist with the financing. But in terms of the content that is compelling, that our audiences will really, gravitate to our platform to watch, that comes from you as the industry. So our call really is, SABC channels, right? You know the content. What we've done in the past 2-3 years is reevaluate a lot of our content and ask ourselves questions about how relevant some of the content is. We've re-looked at the brand. If we say SABC 1 is youth, and we say Mzansi for sure, and yet Mzansi for sure was launched when I was youth, is it speaking to the youth of today? Right? So we've done that exercise, and moving forward, you will see we'll start now in our roadshow asking for content that speaks to the refreshed brand, that speaks to the current youth that are now watching content on multiple screens and are not necessarily watching linear schedules. And I repeat again, that content comes from you. And we are open. So traditionally, SABC dealt with 100% commission. So you come, you submit your program, it's unsolicited, or there's an RFP, and then it goes through evaluation, and then after 2 years, maybe you'll get some sort of response, right? Those are the sort of things that we're trying to change. We've engaged our principals, so to speak, Treasury, the Department of Communications and Technology, and we said, can we get assistance so that we can also be as nimble as our competitors? Can we get assistance so that we can move the cycle of getting content on air? And I must say, it's looking very positive. So as much as, so we would want to, and the idea is when a concept comes, whether it's unsolicited or when we issue an RFP, we should be able to turn that around very quickly, respond to the industry quickly, and be able to get the latest content on air. Instead of putting content that was commissioned a year ago, it's no longer relevant in 2022, all right? We've got other models that we've introduced, so we're relying less on commissioned content. So we're looking at hybrids, so talk to us. We've got pre-sales. A pre-sale is almost like a license, except you come to us and you pitch the concept, and if we like the concept, we issue a letter so that you can go out and raise funds. Right? So there's been this chicken and egg challenge for a long time where producers need to raise funds, but to get the funds, the funders are saying, get a platform. So we say, let's hear the concept, and we are willing to risk upfront and give you a letter and say, if you do meet these requirements and you raise the funds, X amount, we are willing to pay X amount. Generally, we commit about a third of the budget. And you then come back. You can go to the IDC, you can go to DTI, you get the IDC rebate, you get DTI hopefully funding, you can go to NEF, wherever. Fundraise, come back, and the good thing about a pre-sale, you retain all the intellectual property rights. Right? So what does that do? It empowers you as a producer, you own your own content, as opposed to the commissioning that the SABC owns, and then we put in the archives and you never see again. All right, so that's it. And then there's another one, which obviously is the straight license, and we do Also, if you've received content, if you've received funding, you've gone through the GFC program and you've got content, we will license. We've been doing that. We've got content from the NFVF. There was a black women producers a strain that we did about 2 years ago on SABC1, performed very well. And because of that, we've opened a slot on SABC1 throughout the whole year that's going to be dedicated to local films. But to fill that slot, we need the content. We really need the content, and yes, we need to also partner. And with the flexibility that we will get from government in us navigating our red tape and the funding, we should be able to get more content onto SABC1. So, and there are other discussions that we are having in looking at other projects that we can put on. But essentially, what we are saying is, moving forward, and we're not hiding it, the USP for us to survive in this tough industry is going to be local content, because that's our strength. And that's who we are as SABC, right? We are a public broadcaster. It's our mandate that has got us to where we are. A mandate is not a bad thing. So representing our own stories in our own language is exactly what we want. I think I've spoken too much. So before I sit down, please look at our website. When we do our roadshows from next month, we will still have one for Gauteng. We will send out the SMSs, and obviously we will go around the country engaging producers and production companies and creators in how we can increase the content, but also how we can save the SABC. If the SABC gets back on track, the industry will be back on track.
Continue then with the rest of our program. Here in our midst is also Donavan Marsh, who is an international film producer, South African born Donavan, but he has also been doing incredibly in the international space, and he's with Sanctuary Films. If you don't know his work or have not seen it before, I'm going to ask that we queue up some of his work, and then Donavan is going to take the floor.
Are you ready? military build-up in Russian history. I told 6 say you want to hunt a killer. We've been ordered to cross waters in no American sun. That's what war should. Torpedoes in the water! Bow stations. Ship ready! Solution ready! Weapon ready! Fire!
Thanks, Jim.
What's so cool? What if we defeat President Sakharov?
We rescue the Russian president.
He's ever crossed before. Take us along the ocean floor.
We want you to catch a Russian president. His defense.
We're going in with 4 of our boys. I'm training simulations for this one. If we don't pull this off, World War III.
I see that Russian film I made some while ago is quite relevant today. I just want to share a little bit of my story about how I went from making the first of those 2 movies there, a South African film in vernacular for animators, to the very next film I made was a $40 million film with Joe Butler and Gary Oldman. I just want to tell you a bit about how that could even happen and how that could happen to you as well. I made it number. I didn't think it was going to be particularly special, but it caught fire around the world. That film was unbelievably well received. And I'm talking about a film that's very South African. It's in vernacular. It's not even in a language that anyone overseas can understand. It's got subtitles. But something about that film captured the imagination of the world. And I just want to share with you that story because it was completely unexpected for me. I thought I was going to make a small movie for the local audiences, but it ended up finding an audience in every country in the world. We sold it internationally, and it was exceptionally well received. I started by getting accepted into the Toronto Film Festival, and I took the film there, and I was amazed at the response I got. And this is my analysis of what happened, and what I think we should be looking at as local filmmakers. I discovered that what was so great about it, number was that it was a genre film. And I really feel like we should be making more genre films. Yes, there's a space for the art films as well. But it was amazing, well, this was a genre that people understood in America. It's a high genre, they know it, they know the tropes, they love it. But it was set in a world of characters that they'd never, ever encountered before. In languages they'd never heard. They loved the Tsotsitaal. They loved the different, and we used everything from Afrikaans to Setswana to Venda to Zulu, and there's even a little bit of English in there as well. They loved the South African subcultures. And I'm urging all of you to make genre movies in our subcultures. And don't feel like you have to Americanize them. It's enough that it's a genre. In fact, South Africanize them. Use our languages. And don't feel that those are just for a South African audience. You can take what is unique about South Africa, what is unique about our stories, and make it as South African as you can. And you will find that international people will fall in love with it, as long as you have that genre element that they can recognize. Because what they're desperate for is something original, a new voice. And this is why I got the $40 million picture straight after that, is because they wanted something original. They wanted a point of view. They wanted my South African point of view. And that's what I try to bring to that feature film. And that's what the international people are actually looking for. So if you as a filmmaker, you as a producer, you as a writer, don't lose what you know. Try and bring what you know and how you express yourself as a South African to the international market. And they're going to back it up. Because in fact, they're kind of tired of their own worlds. They want new worlds. They want new languages. They want new points of view. And if you can bring that, that is very special. And the other thing that's interesting about South Africa, in fact, this was the first question I was asked. I showed this movie at the Toronto Film Festival, and somebody raised their hand in the Q&A and they said, well, how can I, as a white person, be making this film about black people? And that's a relevant question. Maybe some of you are thinking that right now. And this was my answer. This is my honest answer, is that something very special happens in South Africa because of the many cultures we have, the 11 official languages, means you have 11 cultures at least and subcultures within those. And when I bring my Western influences and they collide with the African influences, something kind of magical happens. It's very unique. And when you allow all those cultures to talk to one another, something very special can come out. And Number was one of those films. It brought everybody's sensibility, and I collaborated very closely with the cast. I had a gangster, Israel Makubyane, ex-gangster, famous actor. He came in and he brought in the language, he brought in the reality of his life, his time in prison, his knowledge of what goes on in these nice gangs. I brought my movie-making sensibility to the movies that I loved growing up, and my love of genre. And we all collaborated without losing what was best of all of that. And created something very unique. So I would really urge you guys. I mean, I made a movie for R3.5 million. This was 10 years ago. It's possible. Just make that special, very South African film, and you're going to get noticed overseas. And be proud of that content and take it proudly onto the international stage. And you'll be amazed how that'll get lapped up. If you try and be something you're not, or try and be American or be something, I'm even resistant to bringing out international actors to be putting into our South African productions. Let's put South Africans in the leads. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for that, Donavan. And I believe we've got enough industry, enough talent in the industry to be able to have as many South African leads as possible. On that note, let me move over then, and before I continue with the program, actually acknowledge a couple more of our guests that have been joining us tonight. Let me acknowledge Imran Khan, the CEO of GEP. Mr. Khan, good evening to you. Let me acknowledge Simpiwe, who is the chairperson of the MICT CETA. And I also want to acknowledge Keitumetse, who is a board member of the GFC. So thank you all for being able to make today's program. On that note, we've spoken about the tourism industry and how significantly it was impacted by the last 2 years. I'm going to invite Mr. Barba Gaoganediwe, who is with the Gauteng Tourism Authority, to speak about the role of the industry as well, and what resetting and reopening up looks like. And if it also means that we're going to get discounted prices for when we need to shoot, not to stay to shoot at these very beautiful destinations.
Thank you, Cathy, and good evening. I can start there. So from GP number to Gomorrah via Mzansi for sure, the head office of lifestyle and entertainment here, to the industrialization funding mechanism of the IGC, to some of our content pioneer with the drip. That tells the Gauteng story. So I'm just giving you the script. I deliberately chose that because sometimes we look at tourism in a traditional way, discounts, people with the binoculars, with the short pens, looking at animals. And we need to change that narrative because, for example, we are a lifestyle entertainment, sports entertainment destination. We don't have the mountains, we don't have the sea, but what we have in abundance is people with style, with tenacity, 14 million of them in a 52 million country. That's a unique offering. So how do we package it? Secondly, from one of the only 3 cities in the world to host the FIFA World Cup final and the Rugby World Cup final, the only street in the world with 2 Nobel laureates that woke up and say, hi, how are you, from each other. The only street in the continent that gets featured in a monopoly. The only place where you touch base with your common human ancestry in the cradle of humankind, World Heritage Site. To the manufacturers of our fighter helicopter, the Roy Falk, right here, that should have been featured in the number to showcase our military prowess. To the Union Building Office that continue to symbolize the seat of power, but nobody knows how does the Union Building Office of the President looks like. And we all know how does the Oval Office looks like, and how does even the President walk back. And this is a call that I'm making to our filmmakers, to our producers, to say we are available. Tourism and the destination marketing and the film sector forms part of an integrated puzzle. The Nelson Mandela Bridge, our unique taxis, the towers at Hillbrook should form an indelible link in your opening links, in your closing link as part of our destination. The Joburg Red Bars, the unique offerings in Tshwane, our township lingo. So I'm deliberately not saying the traditional tourism stuff. And this is how we should be telling our story. My role, our job at Gauteng Tourism Authority is being responsible for the destination brand. And part of the unique way of us doing this work, one of the channels we have adopted is storytelling. But you can't be the one that tells the story. I've just given you some of the key facts and figures that you might probably not know. We should be having a feeling why we are part of the 10 biggest derbies in the world. Chomosono leaving the wedding to go and score a glorious goal. That should be sitting side by side on a Netflix production with the Pele and the Neymar film. It shouldn't be. And we should be able to dive back to our sports tourism route that take us back to Orlando Stadium, that take us back to Peferi, to the home of Kaizer Chiefs, and the Proeza, the Sports Science Center in Pretoria, and all of those things. For me, this is the content that will set us apart and make us recover our destination. We are available to work with you. We'll be coordinating with the Film Commission, the part of the Film Summit. There's absolutely no reason why we don't have a Soweto International Film Festival premiere at Vilakazi Street with the red carpet throughout. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Barba. I can tell you've given the elevator speech a number of times. All right. On that note, let me then continue here. Very soon we're going to be talking about the funding aspects of how we get all of this done. Before we get to it, however, I just want us to spend a little more time hearing the stories of how it is that some of our legends have made it. Let me invite Thabang Moleya to come onto the stage.
Oh.
You've been investing money from your bank. And we've been watching for quite a while now.
Don't understand.
Sports cards. Trips abroad.
I'm not talking about that, Bobby.
Yeah, so we talking about that high-tech business.
Just hope you got shot.
I'm looking for the most badass operators out there. Here's one. I'm not great. Give it time. Can you show us who's badass operators? Yeah. So it's your hands.
For giving his client his money's worth.
We've been looking at
your performance lately. Welcome to the big boys. He specifically requested you.
You're a truly amazing woman.
You are a client.
Okay. She's still loving it. What more could you ask for?
I actually don't know what I want. Well, you better figure it out.
Life all this time!
Enough the second on me.
16-year-old boy from Boston.
I'm not gonna let you go.
I can't lose you two. Suck it up and do the job.
I just wanted you to know in case you get your shit, whether he lives or dies. He's not gonna make it.
I lost a patient.
I need your help.
What do you know about the bomb?
I want a name!
What a terrible things happen to the little girl.
Good evening everyone. It's an honor to be here. All protocol observed. Thank you, MEC. Thank you, Gauteng Film Commission. Joy is here. Hello, Joy. For me, my journey in the industry has been very instrumental by a lot of things that have played important parts. National Film and Video Foundation for the film festivals I was able to travel to. Gauteng Film Commission for some funding into my projects and my movies. So I think for me, I'd like to give a voice to the young filmmakers because I was once a young filmmaker and I understand the importance of breaking into the industry and the challenges that young filmmakers have. Institutions are quite expensive and our youth end up not finishing their courses. Our parents are put under immense pressure to pay for these institutions. The kids don't finish, or some of the kids finish, and they're looking for jobs. We get endless CVs every single day. I'm looking at CVs of kids looking for opportunities who have qualifications. I know we speak about training, but these kids are trained. These kids they've been trained enough. It's really about opportunities now. And it's about how on our projects, on projects such as Gomorrah, on projects such as my movie, how can they plug into those projects? How can they get employment? Already telling your parents that you want to study film and TV is already a very long conversation because they don't understand why you want to get into this industry. And then you get into the industry and then you don't get a job and then you end up with a qualification working in a place where your skill is wasted and you're not actually doing what you've trained to do. So I'm honored to be on the Gauteng Film Commission. I'm honored to be a G-Force member, and I'm going to advocate for a change in youth development, in giving these kids some sort of opportunity because in as much as we've had great careers, I feel like I'm only starting. Donovan's, and I admire your work and I respect your work, brother. You're absolutely great. But it's about the kids. It's about these guys. These are the guys that are going to carry us. It's about giving them a voice and giving them a platform. So I'd like to encourage everyone who's on this panel, the people, the powers, for us to really inject the youth and give them a voice. And one thing that we did learn from this pandemic is that when we were locked down, all we had was entertainment, right? All we had was the local shows that people are on to watch, and that's part of how Gomorrah got so popular at the beginning, was that our show launched at the beginning of the pandemic. And obviously it was, it is a good show and we've maintained those numbers and we've risen from those numbers, but my point is that this is such an important craft in bringing people together, in bringing families together, And we also have a great opportunity to talk about the things that this country has to talk about, you know, the topics of men's health, the topics of gender-based violence, the topics of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, drinking and driving. And so all of these things, media and the craft that we do is such an important way to educate people and to give light into topics that are very uncomfortable spaces, and to open up dialogue that we should be having as a nation, dialogue that's important in us growing and us healing as a nation and as Black South African men. We can do better. So thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the year. I look forward to partnering up with a lot of people on this panel and really making a difference to the industry and really uplifting and taking care of the next generation. And to all the legends that are in this room, Mamzo, I love you.
Thank you for that, Thabang. I'm going to ask that, can we please give Tati a happy ending, Baton? She's been through too much. Can she just get her happy ending at last? He talked about the powers that be, and we know that much of power and influence lies in who controls the purse, right? Where is the money to make all of these dreams a reality going to come from? No, he's looking at me like, please don't do that to me. Where is the money going to come from? And what are the models of funding that are available to many of you that are in the room? Well, let me invite then the head audiovisual at the IDC, Maijang Mpherwane, who is going to be giving us at least his organization's view in terms of where we are. But before you come up on stage, I'm going to also acknowledge in the room another board member of the GFC, Thabang Moleya, who is with us. And also a reminder that, of course, we are streaming today's event at Gauteng MEC on the Facebook link. And just be mindful, because we are going towards the Q&A session, that when you do ask your question and answers, we're recording you. Just know the world is watching you. On that note, Ndadu Maijang, the floor is yours.
Yeah, too much pressure. I wish I had the money myself. Probably wouldn't be here, but good evening, MEC, CEO, board members of the GFC. Thank you so much for inviting us to come and engage. We did our best to be here. I'm not here alone. I'm here with my colleague Mpho. I can see she's somewhere around here. So beyond this, if you want to talk to us, please do find Mpho somewhere here, and she'll gladly assist and engage you on whatever needs that you have. I think a lot has been said, both by the platforms and the industry's experts themselves, together with Barba there from tourism. I think a lot has been said, and I always, when people ask us what our interest really is in the industry, I try to sum it up by saying there are probably two aspects to the content production industry. I don't like calling it the film industry per se, because production is multifaceted, and I say there are two aspects to it. The one being getting into the industry and producing to preserve what we call the South African story, and preserving our arts and culture is perhaps what government would be primarily interested in, ensuring that our stories are being shared with not just ourselves but the world. And then there's the business of film, right? The business of production. And that's what we are interested in. We appreciate the former. We love the former. but we really are interested in the latter. It's what drives us. It's what makes us wake up every single day to go to work. We have this, and sometimes I say to my colleagues, perhaps we're naive, but we have this strong belief that says this industry can be probably the biggest contributor to the South African GDP, far bigger than what manufacturing does, far bigger than what the volatility right? Thabang just said something eloquently and said, when the pandemic hit, right, all we had was entertainment. We didn't give a damn how much the price of gold was. It really didn't matter. It didn't matter that people could go on the ground and produce platinum and diamond, and the oil price tanked. It tanked significantly because none of you was going out and driving your cars, right? Nobody was consuming petrol. All you had was entertainment. And suddenly, all that content that was sitting in the archives was suddenly becoming relevant, and it was an asset that you could sweat, right? So that's what we're interested in. We believe not only that this industry, if managed correctly, but by all stakeholders, from government to funders to the industry players themselves, if managed properly, it can be the greatest contributor to the GDP of this country, better than any other sector. Secondly, that it can be a catalyst to job creation. You know, when we sit and we assess deals in the manufacturing space, people spend millions of rands to create really small number of jobs, right? And ours are looked at as, okay, fine, you're creating 1,000 jobs, but those are ad hoc jobs. They're freelance jobs, they are not sustainable. But when you look at it, the amount of money that is being paid in this industry on an ad hoc basis is crazy, right? It's equivalent to what a 3,500 earning minimum wage earning person sweating 12 hours a day in the middle of a heat in some power station in the middle of nowhere. It's way bigger than what they earn cumulatively in a year, right? Meaning, technically speaking, you could work for 6 months and go rest for the other 6 months if all you were doing was looking at it from a perspective of a minimum wage, right? But if you were consistently employed, then it means you'd probably be making more money than any person working in most sectors, even if you are probably the blue-collar worker of the industry. I'm not talking about Donavan and Thabang there, who coined it, but you know, so that's how important this industry is, and that's how low-key we have been, because all we've really been doing is just pushing this notion of telling a South African story and trying to, you know, not taking a dig at SABC or DSTV, but trying to be on local platforms. You know, and I always say, with all due respect, if you're a producer in South Africa, you're probably struggling unless you have a daily show, right? Unless if people see some form of your content on a daily basis on their screen, 99% chances are you're a struggling producer. On the same token, if you're an actor or an actress and you are not seen on TV on a daily basis, there are high probabilities that you're a struggling actor. But how do we turn that around? Because the power is there to do it, right? And secondly, we keep talking as role players, all we do is talk, but the reality of the matter is the industry is in a mess. And in small parts or in big parts, we all have a role to play in how messed up the industry is. It's the most uncoordinated industry in the country. The most unpredictable, unreliable industry with lots of uncertainties. When South Korea, with how many people? Right? We have 57 million people. They're probably what, 14, 15? My stats are probably incorrect. But how flourishing is that industry now? Why can't we get there? Why can't we entice commercial banks? You can't go to a commercial bank right now, Standard Bank, and say, I have a 4. And your relationship manager looks at you with a straight face. No, not possible. Because it's deemed the most riskiest industry, purely because there is no science in terms of how we arrive at returns. There's no science. Nobody can say to me, this is how you make a film and this is how you become successful in the market. It's like, let's throw it to the universe and let's see what the universe returns in number. If it comes back positive, it becomes a launch pad to the rest of the world. If it bombs, and there are a lot of them that have bombed, right? Then you're as good as your last job. Goodbye. But I'm sure there can be a science. I'm sure there's a way to de-risk this industry. I'm sure there's a way to be predictable, to be reliable, because that's what matters. It's a numbers game, guys. It's the passion, the love, the affinity, the whatever you call it, all those nice ways. They won't put food on the table, right? At your funeral, will still be saying, yeah, this industry is abusive. It's X, it's Y, it's Z, but bottom line is it's a numbers game. And until we get and we drive the industry towards that point, including the platforms, by the way, there's no reason why the SABC should, in this day and age, be commissioning David. I'm sorry. There's no reason. There's no reason why you should be owning IP. Absolutely no reason in the world. Give it to the producers. Let them go sweat it. But of course, you as producers, you cannot ask to be given a, what's the word? A handout. Right? There's no free lunch. There's no free lunch. You've got to work and sweat for it. You've got to prove that you're capable of running a sustainable business, and that's why we're interested in the business aspect of content production. Right? You've got to switch your mindset to looking at this thing from a perspective of running a sustainable business. If not, you're going to crash and die. So it's important that you own IP, but it's important that we stop being fixated with telling the South African story. My argument is nothing stops us from telling locally relevant but globally appealing stories. Number, I think, is probably it's one example that comes to mind, right? South African story, Venek, as Venek as you ever find it, finds international resonance, right? Purely because, again, it's that voice that people have been craving for. So go find out what that voice is, give it to them. If I'm a farmer and the market says to me, give us green pepper, let's believe I will farm green pepper until I turn blue. I may hate green pepper with passion, but because the market wants green pepper, I will give it to them until they turn blue in the face. And they say to me, no, we no longer want green pepper, we now want sweet potatoes. The minute I learn that sweet potatoes are the in thing, what am I going to do? I will farm sweet potatoes until my ancestors come back. Right? That's how we look at things when we go and we get presented with a deal to assess. We have to sit in front of a committee of technocrats, people who just care about numbers. Right? Tell them that this is a nice story about GBV or, those things are critical, they're important, we know them, we appreciate them, but bottom line is, what do the numbers say? What's the bottom line? If I put my own 1 rand into this, my children's money that I just earned out of slaving over a 30-day period, and they say, put your 1 rand in this, and I say, what do I get in return? And you say, well, look at what box office does in South Africa. If it, no. At least, like, there's never a guarantee in anything. There's no guarantees in life. It's always a risk. But at least try and de-risk it for me in such a manner that I may be willing to put that one without taking too much time, right? I was asked to speak about what instruments the IEC is offering. I can go on and on and on. I get too passionate. But we there to provide risk funding to try and enable the industry to move forward from an economic viability perspective. So when you come to us, ask yourself extremely painful questions around what makes your film commercially viable. Who are you selling it to? Who wants to see it? What proof do you have that there at least is some form of a market that exists out there for you? For us, South Africa is a secondary market, which serves the relevant stories aspect of things. Your money lies out there, outside South Africa. And I think number probably has demonstrated that that's why you were able to go produce a $40 million film that you sold to the world, right? Your money lies out there. Whether you produce a 1 million rand film or you produce a $40 million film, your money does not lie in South Africa. South Africa is but a secondary market because we know the rates that DSTV and SABC pay for your licenses, right? If you come to me and you say, borrow me 1 rand and I will wait for a license fee from SABC to pay you back, I will laugh at you. That should be extra cheese that you put on your table, but your primary money lies out there in the world. So what we look for is that give us a sense that you've got your story together in terms of how commercially viable this is, and make it make sense to us. We will ask you, we will poke holes in your submissions, in a bit not to intimidate you, but in a bit to try and get to that point where we can be your ambassadors when we speak to our principals who give us hell on air when we speak to them. I think the one other thing that perhaps Gauteng possesses beyond what Barba said is the opportunity for infrastructure, right? We're looking for that. We're looking to play not just in the production aspect of this sector, but there's infrastructure that is necessary, that is needed, especially as we're now starting to open up and the national state of disaster will hopefully be lifted an hour from now or whenever it is that our father decides to lift the MEC. when it gets lifted, it means the industry will be open to work, will be able to receive international clients, right? Gauteng has to be a driver in terms of infrastructure. We've seen what the Gauteng is capable of doing, but there really are no production studios. We tried something with Skylink, it didn't quite work, but we're willing to experiment some more, get our fingers and even more, if it makes sense. Of course, Skylink will make it a little bit more difficult for you to just get the dollar and move, but it is what it is. Make it make sense to us. We're keen to invest in the space, but it's also about the different role players coming on board and actually being keen to assist this industry to move forward. Government, ourselves as state-owned entities, the private sector, and most importantly, you as role players. Without you, we won't do it. So yeah, on that note, let me not say one more word. Thank you.
So basically, good luck to anybody who needs to get money out of Mr. Mpherwane. It might be a week of fasting and a month of prayer and some coaching for that question and answer session, and then maybe you'll be able to squeeze some R500,000 out of him. Very, very sobering reflections there, but I suppose also just an idea of just how difficult it is to access the funding for many people. Thanks for that, Mr. Mpherwane. Before we do that, let me welcome onto the stage the Minister, the MEC. I just gave you a promotion there. Politicians are very sensitive, so don't get me in trouble.
No, but let me begin by thanking everybody for being here today. I'll try and keep my input as short as possible, noting that everybody's already very hungry. So I'm looking at our panelists and they're watching everyone eat. So I don't want them to kill me. But because we're people of protocol, let me begin by acknowledging our GFC board, as led by the Deputy Chair, the GFC CEO, and all our panelists. I'm ready to thank all of you for coming today. Lala was indicating that we're here on a Friday. We indeed are. But it's because this discussion is so critical to us getting back the sector to where it ought to be. We talk about reimagining the sector post-COVID. And this is what we really want to do, and it's part of the initiatives that we will be embarking on, so that these don't become talk shops, but they really allow us to pause and just really reflect on what we've been through. It goes without saying that these sectors have been hit hard, so we're meeting both the arts and we'll be meeting those in the sports, because these sectors truly have been hit hard. If we have to compare any other sector, this one has felt it the most. And so when we reimagine our post-COVID narrative, we ought to do that together. Because we certainly don't want to be a government that thinks on your behalf, but rather is able to really hear you and some of the suggestions that you've made today. So I'm quite happy with the comments that have come out, and maybe let me just speak to a few of the questions that were made. I did say that I'm avoiding the speech, so I want to make this as quick as possible. So, out of the panelists and part of the things that they were indicating, Donavan makes a very important input, in that being authentic to the South African story is critical. And I know our manifest maybe differs with that, but I must agree that it's very, very critical. If you look at the West and some of the movies that have come out of there, whether it's through the music videos that have come out, if you look at Beyonce's influence, is very heavy on, it's an African influence that is there. If you look at the Black Panther that came out and so forth, you can see that everybody is looking to Africa. So it makes no sense to me why we should not be celebrating that HBR. And I know I'm different with Mr. Moneybags here, but he's saying we must all sell as many potatoes as possible. But it's important that you remain authentic. And for us as government, part of the mandate we have is about raising the consciousness of society. So if you're not rooted in the South African story, it's going to be very difficult to achieve that. And it's critical for us because if you look at the role that the arts and sports have played in liberating this country, and how the arts was used as a measure to really transition and transfer our story to the rest of the world, we cannot lose that power. I mean, whenever I speak to artists, I always indicate that you've got a soft power. And the soft power you hold is that unlike what we're seeing now between Ukraine and Russia, but you don't use hard power. You don't need to use bombs and so forth to be heard. You are able to really influence the thinking of society through the content that you provide. So the stories that you tell ought to be reflective of who we are and the type of nation we want to see. Because I can assure you, government alone will not be able to do that. So, I'm looking throughout the house and some of the great stories that have come from this house. Thabang is just left now, but they're doing exceptionally well with Gomora. We've seen a number that's done exceptionally well. Alone is doing, you guys are being celebrated as we speak. Finally, Lwazi did exceptionally well. And all of these crime and so forth and so forth. What is the best way that we can teach society if we don't do it through the arts? Because we could stand there as politicians or we can stand there as teachers and police and so forth and really want to tell everybody how they ought to conduct themselves. But people acquire knowledge differently. And the guy that was coming from who utilizes film as a way to transfer knowledge indicates that even education is critical. And the numbers are there. People are not reading as much anymore. But through this medium, we're able to touch them differently and still make sure that they're able to acquire the messaging that is important. So I fully agree with what Donavan was saying, that it's important that we don't lose that which we are and we ought to remain authentic. The SABC has spoken, and David, thank you for, I think yours was a really refreshing reflection of where the SABC is going. All of us are worried, especially those of us that grew up watching TV. We grew up on SABC movies and SABC series and so forth. I know Wednesdays used to be big for us. I'd get home and I'd want to watch everything that's watching, from Zola, from Lizo at the time and so forth. But this generation doesn't know that SABC. So we need to bring back the SABC that we know. This generation does not know the SABC. I'm seeing the young ones here. You don't want them to aspire, and maybe I was not quoted again, but you don't want them to move away from the national broadcaster. Maybe we can put it that way. So the national broadcaster must be able to claim its space. Because what they're finding elsewhere is local content. So why is this not being celebrated within our national broadcaster? The success of your other platforms is the success of the local content. But of course we worry about the type of content that is there, because we don't want South Africa to be seen with stories of witchcraft, of killing each other and so forth. And this is what we're fed currently. That is not who we are. That is not who we are. And I think when we speak about reimagining our post-COVID reality and the type of nation we seek to build, development ought to be at the heart of it. And importantly, our values ought to be at the heart of it. We play so many crime movies, we play so many things that speak about witchcraft and so forth, and then we get shocked when we have GDP levels of this nature or our crime stats are this high. What are we expecting? What are you feeding young minds on a daily basis? So it's important that we utilize content to truly develop the nation for the type of society we seek to see. Because those that have spoken, they're indeed correct. A lot of work needs to happen, and some of us are saddened by Ricky Rick's passing and the issues of mental health and so forth. But content and TV must be able to find and tap into people's insecurities, into their fears, and really be able to assist them, those who are unable to speak out and so forth, but they must at least be able to find some form of an outlet, or even just create content that allows families to discuss what they are seeing and be able to be closer together. So I thought it was quite refreshing what the SABC was indicating and how they seek to reposition the national broadcast. I was even saying to David that, because we're situated in Gauteng, and all your major athletes, artists, everybody is here, it only makes sense that we need to proactively partner with the national broadcaster to help them make sure that with all the content that is there, by the various talents that we have here, we're able to assist them and really bridge the gap between the two. And we think that is the role that we should actively play. So we're quite happy to hear, and we want to see. At the time, the former CEO used to speak about 90% local content. You're saying 80, you're moving close. Let's raise it, because we're really unashamed of having local content. So we do want to see it being profiled as much as possible. And I think that Mr. Mankbags touches on something that is critical. And that's really your name for the session. So, whilst he raises an important point about the economics, and we really can't avoid that, because the business of sports and arts is what we're all about. Yes, there's the fun, there's the talent, there's the creativity that is there, but you can't avoid the economics and being able to be sustainable. And that's really what I took from you. And not that they must become like accountants. The problem with people that I with them play with numbers and economists and accountants is that they only see the money. So he wants to see the bottom line. But we're saying to you, let's see the bottom line, but don't let that make you move away from the creativity and the authentic stories that we want to see. And they can be a measure of the two, which is really what he was trying to speak to, that they can be a measure of the two. And it's an issue of making sure that perhaps there may need to be more sessions, so you're able to take people through on how to make their ideas to be bankable. Because being creative without the economics is really not going to assist us. At the end of the day, you do have the bread and butter issues you do need to make sure that you're able to deal with, and that's important that we do that. So Forbes makes a prediction that the next billionaires are going to come from the arts. And I thought that was interesting. You can say that again. Because as we embrace technology and we see so many things being mechanized and so forth, the only thing that cannot be replicated is artists. So this is why the predictions are showing that artists are going to be your most valuable individuals in the future. Because you simply can't replicate creativity, your originals, and you must be able to stay within the sectors that you're in. Of course it's tough, and I think Lala speaks to that. It is tough. It's a tough industry, it's not coordinated. And we're happy that the President has brought it back to allow us to really have more engagements on that field, so that you're able to influence how you want it to look. And we will be working together with yourselves to make sure that is done. But we do want to see the finalization of this. We don't think that it's sustainable that the sector remains in the manner that it is. So one gets disheartened. I know that we had one of the early sessions when we began in 2019, and some of the colleagues were saying, no, but you can't regulate the arts, we don't work like that and so forth. Perhaps, yes, it's a creative space, but like any other sector, competition thrives and guides every sector that's there. Whether you're an architect, you're a dentist, you're a doctor, and so forth and so forth. Competition is there, but all we want you to do is to be able to agree on what are those minimum standards that must be in place. That's it. So that you're able to protect yourselves. Because unfortunately, the sector that you're in, much like politics, one day you're up, the next day you're not, and so forth. But when you hit your knock, you must be protected enough that you don't end up being one of those that we have to read about or that government has to bury. We don't like to bury artists. We don't think it's our role. So that's why we think it's important that we must be able to ensure that you're protected and you're able to be self-sustainable and really celebrated for the craft and the talents that you have. So we fully agree with you on that, and that the issues of coordination on the sector are critical. So we will be working quite closely with yourselves in that. But let me end off with the following, and I really left this one that speaks to the youth for last. Our department speaks of a development pipeline, and we do this both in sports and arts. And what that means is that we must be able to take you from your elementary stage and be able to allow you to grow to the height of that which your talent takes you to. And so Nkosana raises the issue about making sure that we're able to assist developmental guys. Those that need to travel, the equipment, one of the ladies spoke about the provision of equipment and so forth. So those are the things that the GFC is already doing. And what I hear you to be saying is that we just need to widen the net, and we will do so. Because we do think that it's important that in that developmental work that we do, it's critical. But it doesn't end with training. So Thabang, before he left, was indicating that there's so many people that are trained, and government does that very well. We train until your bones are falling off. The issue at hand is about market access. And it's about ensuring that we assist artists to move to the next level. Because our role is about creating an enabling environment. So in the market access discussions that we ought to have with you, it's about how do we take you to the next level. So if you're a Donavan, okay, well, you've done it, man. But we want others to be like and be able to have those international, really great celebrated movies. But if you're an individual that has just made it, you've got blockbuster that's done well, but you want to go to the next level, those relations are important. So we started doing that with our Makubyane artists. You'll know that they own the national sound, really, and continental sound is what it's become. But the issue is about how do we take them to the world? And you know, there's a popular hashtag, Makubyane to the world, and we want to actively do that. So when they were in the UK, we were able to connect them with the Councillor General there, with the High Commissioner and so forth. And those relations are important. That is the role of government. So that we take you beyond just being local friends. So the issues of market access, and that's why we speak about this development pipeline, is because we are Gauteng. We're in an economic hub and we're the home of champions. So we must be able to replicate and build as many champions as possible as they can be. So that market access work is central to that which we do. Because we understand, and I'm not downplaying other provinces and not dissing them, but when you're in an economic hub, we just do have to do things differently. So the economics of that which we do are critical, and that's why the issues and the focus that the department is going to be placing on market access is critical. And we work together with our entities because we think that is the way that we ought to go, so that you're self-sustainable, but importantly that you become brands, not just celebrated in the country, but truly global brands. Chair, I thought I should leave it there and not speak for too long, but to really thank everybody for being here. We think that this session has been fruitful. As I indicate, we're about reimagining the sectors post-COVID, and I think you've been able to assist us to do that. Thanks.
Thank you for that, MEC Hlophe. I think on that note, generally after the MEC has spoken, or the highest ranking politician it is, has spoken, nobody else really speaks, right? It's that on that, nothing else to be added. Safe to say that I spoke about some of the hats that are on your chairs. You may have found them on your chairs. Dinner is going to be served soon, and the DJ will also liven this place up. But before we go, I'm going to ask our panelists, I'll give them an opportunity to perhaps exit. I don't know where you guys are going to grab your hats from, and maybe if we can make our way just to the photo booth, if I can put that outside, just for a quick picture opportunity before we release you for the rest of the evening. Of course, some of you that want to be part of that that picture that we're going to take ahead of dinner being served, just put on your hat and join us on the outside, and we should be able to do that. I think on that note, it's safe to say that this is where we'll leave it for our program for today, but the conversation continues. For those of you who want to accost Mr. Moneybags and David, because they seem to be the people of interest, I don't know if you are free to, but who knows, maybe if you stand next to the right person during this picture, it could make your elevator speech a lot easier than it would be in future. Let me thank you all for your time. Dinner is going to officially be served and the program is now officially over. Good night.